welcome back to another episode. I'm very excited, and I know I say this every week, and every single week it comes from a genuine, heartfelt place. So, today we are going to be talking about a very, very interesting topic, at least in my opinion, and that, you've obviously read the title, is the Society of Urgency. I talk a lot about social media and the fact that basically the digital and online world have shaped our society and especially our generation into, I don't want to say brainless, but we are constantly looking at 15-second videos, getting likes, overnight success stories. We can get something delivered to our door in maybe even the same day. It's crazy, and we've become allergic to slowness and process and delayed gratification. We just can't live with that because we don't get that immediate dopamine hit. And as a result, a lot of the dreams out there are abandoned prematurely, and meaningful progress is discarded the moment it gets uncomfortable. And, I truly believe that there are so many people out there with amazing ideas, and we barely see those ideas even come to light because either they immediately think it's too much work, they don't think it's the right time, or they start and they give up the moment it becomes hard. Yeah, it's a little bit heartbreaking actually, because I think we could all make the world a better place and influence it in our own way. And if everyone just gives up, in the end, nothing happens, right? So one quote to further introduce this topic is by Bill Gates. We all know who Bill Gates is, I'm assuming. And he said, "We overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a decade." Basically, we overestimate what we can do in a day. We try to go hard. We have this new goal. We try to go 360 and do all of this crazy stuff. And then in a decade, we actually underestimate it because we give up and we can't see that slow progress is still progress. And progress in 99.99% of the cases is not perfectly linear. There are going to be plateaus or even downfalls, and that's normal. And so, I think this is such an interesting topic. To really quickly frame how I came up with this idea was actually because I've been on a little bit of a fat loss journey. It's more so actually healing my hunger cues and my fullness cues that I have suppressed for so long, which I talk about in my last episode. But so for me, my mom, I love her to death, but every single week she makes a cake or 2 cakes or even 3 cakes. And so I love to come home to see my family, but immediately I'm just like dragged down. I wake up later, I eat a bunch of that cake and whatever, because it's generally so good. Like she cooks really good, she bakes really well. But it's hard. It's hard to say no. And then obviously because of the sugar, because I barely eat any sugar myself, like when I live on my own, immediately the energy levels go down and I feel awful and everything. So for me, it's easy to then say to yourself, okay, well, now I gotta do all of this cardio and I gotta like barely eat, to balance out the calories or whatever. But I'm so grateful that I don't have that mindset anymore, and I'm thinking, it's okay. Progress is not always linear. This was just a little slope, a little dip, and we're gonna go right back up. So that's what kind of inspired this episode. I'm not gonna talk anymore about like hunger and stuff and food and nutrition and everything in this episode, because I talked about it in my last episode, and I also just more so want to focus on dreams and passions. But I did quickly want to illustrate how I got to this topic. So anyways, I hope you're excited for this episode. I know I am. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so for this first part, I want to go into the psychology and the neuroscience behind this quick fix obsession, and why we quit too soon. So firstly, the psychological parts. As I already said, it's all about dopamine. It's about those quick dopamine hits, and it's really an addiction. We are, not all, but a lot of people are addicted to these instant rewards, right? Likes, messages, or even wins. They all release dopamine, and they teach your brain to crave quick gratification. In today's age, I don't think you fully realize this, but in today's age, it's like we can get a dopamine hit so quickly, and such a large spike as well. And when you look back even like a century ago, it was so much less. It's absolutely insane. And again, I'm not like a digital social media hater or anything, but I think it is important that we learn to use it responsibly. So, but yeah, this is one of, I guess, the bad sides of the internet and everything. And so what we see when we are addicted to these instant rewards and to these dopamine spikes is that often we want those very quickly, right? We want the quick fix. We want the dopamine to hit because we're addicted. And so when we actually look at long-term goals, that dopamine is delayed, obviously, because you're going to get that when you're getting closer to your goal or when you've achieved the goal. And so it feels less satisfying in the short term to think, okay, I'm going to go for that dopamine hit instead of this small spike, right? Even though that goal might bring you so much more joy than now, it's hard for us to imagine that delayed gratification. And so we're really, really bad at delayed gratification, again, because of these short and quick dopamine hits. And so the next point I wanted to get to, actually, I've already talked about in one of my first episodes. I don't remember exactly which one, which maybe I should, but it's The Fix versus the Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck. And so there's a reason that I keep coming back to this, is because it's such good research. It's very famous as well. Basically, people with a fixed mindset, they believe they aren't growing, they are very close-minded. And so when we look at passions and dreams and growing, those with a fixed mindset believe that talent alone brings success. So if results aren't instant, they quit, right? For example, you want to learn how to go ice skating. Okay, you step on the ice and it doesn't immediately feel like you are a princess, right? You are not the most elegant, but obviously, like, if you've never done it before, it's hard, right, to find your balance and everything. But because that dopamine doesn't immediately hit, because it's hard, because we have to learn it, we quit. While people with the growth mindset embrace the long game and the failure and the persistence, because I want to say discipline, but it's more so vision. They have the vision for this long-term goal, and they know that even though the graph might go downwards right now, in the long term, when we zoom out, it's going to go up. Look at a lot of the stock market graphs, right? It's not just a linear way up. You have dips, you have very quick rises. It's like that with any kind of growth almost. And so the growth mindset knows that if there is a dip, this doesn't necessarily mean that the whole graph is going to go down. It means, okay, you could do a little bit more work to get that back up, and that could help. But it doesn't mean you're doomed, and it doesn't mean you should give up just because it gets hard. Yeah, for me, I always try to get into that growth mindset, but again, because of just the nature of being human, we always want to gravitate towards that fixed mindset, and it becomes very hard. Actually, another thing I wanted to say was Learned Helplessness, which is by Martin Seligman. Again, every single episode I say this. If I butcher names, I'm trying. Okay, I'm trying. Basically, what he says is that When we try and fail a few times, we internalize that nothing will work even if success is still possible. In my last episode, we talked a lot about pattern recognition. Every single time something happens, it enforces itself. Okay, for example, we measure, it's a very stupid example, but for example, we measure the temperature of water. I'm going to be talking in Celsius, by the way. And we see, okay, at 100 degrees, it boils. That's the boil temperature of water. And the next time we measure again, we see water begins to boil at 100, etc., etc. We learn, okay, water boils at 100, if it's always 100, right? So what we see here is that every single time that we fail, we think, okay, we will always fail and nothing will work, which kind of makes us stuck, right? Because we can't see that success is still out there, and we can't see that we might be so close, even if we don't know it. So society reinforces this by glorifying ease and vilifying struggle. So a lot of what we see, right, it can be in business, can be in fitness, can be in anything. We see so many people with these beautiful transformations and these success stories and these lives that just seem perfect and everything seems so easy. But we have to try and remember that this is absolutely not the case. I mean, of course, there are people out there who try and show the difficult parts of life as well, which is good because it gives a more realistic view. But for example, when you see a picture, right, of someone with perfect abs, you think they walk around that 100% of the time. It's good to have kind of an inspiration and drive you to become, I don't want to say perfect, but to have this life that you deem perfect. But of course, you have this vision of what their life is like, but it's always different. You don't know these people. And even if you are comparing yourself to someone you do know instead of someone online, I promise you, you do not know 100%. Even if it's your best friend, even if it's your mom, you do not know the whole 100%. When you are closer with people, they might often share things that are hard in their life, but chances are, if you're not living with them especially, you are not seeing them at 2 a.m. crying on the couch I'm not saying everyone is miserable, but everyone is going through hard times, and that is just a part that we don't see. It's normal that we don't see it, but that also enforces in our brains that everyone else's life is easy, but we do see the 100% of our lives, right? And then if we take everything we know about our own life and we take the mean of that, and then we take the mean of what we think someone else's life is, of course, the mean of our life is going to be lower because we actually integrate those lower parts while we don't see the lower parts of someone else's life. So try and use this more as inspiration rather than comparison, because it's so easy to do that. And that actually brings me to a quick intermezzo of some things I've been thinking about. I'm actually thinking of making it a video podcast as well. And actually more so, I'm thinking of starting a YouTube channel, which is kind of crazy, I know. And you might think, okay, well, why are you mentioning this now? Because what I want to do on YouTube is show every single part of life. And obviously I'm building towards a lot of goals. And I think, because I watch a lot of YouTube. I prefer YouTube over like TikTok or something, and so I follow people with high dreams and I see them working for it, and it inspires me, and I also learn from them. And I think it's just nice to see someone actually work and that work on their dreams and their future. And so that's what I was thinking about. And also because I'm a very visual person, I love making things aesthetic and whatever. If you've seen my Instagram, you know what I'm talking about. Obviously, this podcast is audio only, so I can't do that. I might make this a video podcast someday. I'm not sure yet, but I think I'm going to start just filming and seeing if it's going to happen, if it's something that I like. So yeah, let me know on Instagram or TikTok or in the comments or whatever if that's something you would be interested in. And yeah, I think I'm gonna try it because I think it'll also be kind of an accountability for me to live my best life, because, I'd feel kind of a responsibility to share it. But yeah, we'll see. Anyways, quick intermezzo. But that was everything I wanted to talk about psychology-wise. But when we actually go further into the brain and we really look at it neuroscientifically, again, it all comes down to our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala, right? Again, if you are a listener of the podcast, every single time I talk about neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex is just like, look at me. So yeah, every single time it's about the prefrontal cortex. Such a drama queen, to be honest. But yeah, our prefrontal cortex is the very logical part of our brain. How do we connect that to quitting too soon and to following our dreams? Well, the prefrontal cortex supports long-term planning. So it does see the logic of waiting for the bigger reward in the future, right? And then the amygdala drives us to escape discomfort. Now, our amygdala, you can see it kind of very plainly said as kind of a more emotional, instinct-driven part of our brain. So yeah, it wants us to give in to our instincts. For example, again, I talked about this before, it keeps coming back, but the marshmallow experiment that was done, there were these kids and they got one marshmallow and they were told, okay, if you wait until I come back, you get another one and you can get both. And if they did eat the marshmallow and the parent or the adult came back, they could not have another marshmallow. So obviously the logical part, so our prefrontal cortex would say, yeah, you wait, so you can have 2 marshmallows, right? But then our amygdala, it sees that marshmallow looking oh so very sugary, sweet, and delicious. So that's kind of the struggle between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. So when things get hard, the brain seeks a quick dopamine alternative. Netflix, junk food, starting a new project instead of sticking with what you're already doing. That is our amygdala trying to escape that discomfort and to try and get that dopamine. So it's hard for sure. It's hard for sure. And I'm not saying that you should always think about things logically. Again, last episode I talked all about balancing logic and our intuition. So that more emotional thinking. And I think having a good balance is good. But yeah, it's often hard. And quitting offers relief from the discomfort of failure or unmet expectations. But over time, repeated quitting creates a neural habit loop of incompletion. If every single time you start something you quit, it becomes a pattern and it reinforces and it becomes harder and harder to break. So I definitely recommend to try and stick some things out. And I'm not saying if you're feeling like it's no longer aligned with you to keep striving and give 100%. No, but don't immediately say to yourself, okay, I'm done, new thing, whatever, Again, try and find that balance. And what I try to do is be a little bit less impulsive. I'm quite an impulsive person. Try and stick it through. And, it's always just good before deciding something to sleep it out. To just say, okay, I'm going to go to bed tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, that was the psychology and the neuroscientific part. Next, I want to get a little bit closer to, I don't want to say reality, because obviously these things are in reality as well, but I want to talk a little bit about the historical and the I cannot pronounce that word. The historical and the philosophical perspectives. The historical and the philosophical perspectives on patience, and then getting a little bit into the 21st century, how society right now rewards the wrong things and enforces that behavior. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm excited. The historical and philosophical perspectives on patience. I think a very big trend in the self-improvement space, at least like a year ago, but I think it's still quite big, is Stoicism, right? In ancient Greece. And when we look at those ancient Stoics, such as Seneca or Marcus Aurelius, they are actually very logical thinkers, more so than emotional thinkers. That is kind of the core of Stoicism. And so they often really valued patience, and they were really good at actually sticking it out and going for that final reward and delaying gratification. What they also did in terms of that, when we really look at patience, is that they viewed time as an ally in the pursuit of wisdom and mastery. One thing the Stoics really wanted to do, and that was just one of their goals, is to become very smart, very literate, very knowledgeable. And so they definitely saw time as an ally, right? They had still so much time, and they always wanted to know more. And so that patience for them was really important. When we look at one specific Stoic, Epictetus or Epictetus, it depends in what language you say it, I guess. But a quote of him is, "No great thing is created suddenly." So yeah, no overnight successes, no everything. When you really look at it, like, for example, let's take an overnight success story of an e-commerce business, right? We see so many, and it's like, yeah, and all of a sudden I got all of these shipments, and it was like in one night. No, it was not in one night. You came up with the product idea, you built the whole website and every single thing, and the chance that you did all of that within 24 hours and got so many sales, like from the coming up with the idea to the big explosion of sales, the chance of that's in 24 hours is very small. And even that, you could say, okay, the product idea, where did that come from, right? What happened in your life, whatever. You go even further. The chance that everything happened so quickly, so fast, is so small. I was talking with a friend about my podcast, actually, and they said, like, oh yeah, you should have people on, and you should have all of these brands sponsoring you and like getting paid. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I guess, but I have like 10 followers on Spotify. I don't think anyone's gonna pay me just yet. But you know, obviously I do want to grow with this podcast, and I'm not gonna get into that too much, but that is all the long game, right? And so yeah, I'm playing for that long game. It would be great if I could get even more time to put into this and all that good stuff. But in the end, I do this for me and I do this for you, right? If I was doing this with an intention of just creating money, like just making money, I would be maybe 3 episodes in and see, okay, I'm not getting paid anytime soon, and I would quit most probably, right? But I'm not here for that. I'm here for the fun, scientific things. I'm here to expand my knowledge and to hopefully share that with some of you. So again, you could be doing the same thing, but with different intentions. And if you give up too quickly, it might not have happened. If that person that did start a podcast or YouTube or whatever to eventually make money, and they actually stuck it out, maybe they could get paid and make it a career someday. Who knows? But those are the people that quit before that can even happen. That was a slight little rant of the ancient Stoics. Let's move a little bit to the East and go to Japan. So there's this Japanese concept of Kaizen. So Kaizen means continuous incremental improvement. And this has actually been implemented in so many different fields. Like, for example, me, I study business, and I saw it in my operational management class. And then some people use it for personal growth. Some people just use it, across life, across business, whatever. And that just shows that the time that Kaizen was, I don't want to say invented, but was more so brought into form. And you compare that with those ancient Stoics. I mean, the place is completely different. The time is completely different. I'm not saying there is no connection. Who knows? But you can see that even across the world, and across time, it is always seen as slow incremental improvement is better, The long run wins the race. And we can actually take this further into time, a little bit more towards us in the medieval times, right? So the Stoics have passed and whatever. We are now in the medieval times. And what you had in the medieval times, which I think is so interesting, is that you have this whole apprenticeship system. So basically, what was happening was that if you were the son of a baker, you had to become a baker, basically. Like if you were the son of a butcher, there were some people maybe who changed career paths, but most of the time it was pretty straightforward like that. And so obviously you have to learn, right? You have to be an apprenticeship. And they actually also had these guilds. You could kind of see it as like a community. It would be like a community of all butchers, all farmers, all bakers, whatever. And they would have this little community and they would share, their secrets and like tips on how to do it better. And it was basically to all strengthen one another and to, especially for those apprentices, they could really learn from the masters of the craft, right? Did that happen overnight? No, it didn't. Mastery was expected to take years or even decades. And today we abandon pursuits after, give or take, 3 months. When we look, literally just did it. When we look throughout history, every single thing was like that. And all of a sudden this switch flipped, right? And now we just love the quick fixes and everything changed so fast also. It's insane. It's insane. And that's just what I've been thinking about for the past week. Like, it's crazy. And so when we look at today's society, obviously we've been through a lot. And right now we have social media, right? As I said, it only rewards highlights and not the effort behind them. We see, oh yeah, she has this successful business. Well, maybe she had 6 that failed and she learned a lot from it. The growth is still going up. But those 6 dips, no one's talking about them. When we look at our education systems praise results, not resilience. Now, this has gotten better. I know in my school, definitely, there were really nice teachers. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I didn't suffer with this, but I know that other people failed classes and the teachers would, congratulate them. Even if they still failed, they just saw that the grades were going up, which is very good. But very often in education, we see that, the smart kids or the kids that get good grades, they are praised. And they could also be smart, but just the kids who failed or had worse grades, they were not praised. And even if you look at where they come from, they might be making much more growth, but that didn't matter. That didn't matter to the education system. And hustle culture as well. I know I talk about hustle culture a lot in this podcast, but hustle culture is also it glamorizes grind, not endurance. It says, don't sleep, and you should be making this much money in 2 weeks and whatever. Not endurance, not the long game, not the work on yourself bit by bit for a day, like every day, right? Few days a week, work out, eat relatively well, work on your, they don't praise that. They say, you need to lock in now, and I want you to run a marathon in 3 days, and everything. And I know why, because this gets more views. This is much more motivating and inspiring, so to say, and people get motivated and get that increase in dopamine by just imagining themselves getting there. But that's not reality. It's great to have bursts of motivations, but it's not realistic. One quote I also wanted to incorporate to kind of close off this section is by Albert Einstein. Again, should know who he is, leave it at that, but his quote is, "The most powerful force in the universe is compound interest." And he means that not just financially, but in skills, in identity, and purpose. Now, as I said, I study business, so compound interest, I'm very familiar with it. For those who don't know, basically compound interest, think about it like like in math, doing something to the power of, right? So the 2 to the power 2 is 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, it just doubled. If you do 2 to the power 3, that's 8, right? 2 times 2 times 2. That is not tripled, because tripled would be 6, right? If you go to the fourth, 2 to the fourth, you have 16. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Did not quadruple, because then you'd have 8. By this stage, you already have double of what you would have had with linear progression. And so that is compound interest, that basically everything builds upon one another. And so yeah, according to Albert Einstein, the most powerful force in the universe. This is a whole episode in itself, so I'll leave it here. But definitely a very interesting quote and a very interesting perspective. And then before we get into the conclusion, which I always make sure to make action-based, I say this every single episode, action-based conclusions are so important. But yeah, before we get into that, a few real-life examples of delayed success, people that did not give up. Because, you know, a little motivation is great, as I said. So yeah, J.K. Rowling, of course, we know she wrote Harry Potter. She is so rich by now. She has had such an impact. She got rejected by 12 publishers before she actually landed the contract that got Harry Potter on the market. 12. Imagine that. Like, we say like, oh yeah, but imagine actually being passionate about something and 12 single times people tell you, no, it's not that good. No, it's not that great. Imagine that. That is insane. Sorry. Vincent van Gogh. Oh, sorry. As you English people say it, Van Gogh. In Dutch, it's Vincent van Gogh. He is obviously so influential now. His paintings are worth millions upon millions upon millions. In his lifetime, he sold only one painting. Everyone thought they were ugly, they were not worth anything, etc. Colonel Sanders, he launched KFC in his 60s after years of failures. He was already over 60 and he still launched KFC, and look at what it is now. Before that, he failed and failed and failed. And rather than having that reinforced mindset of every single time I try something I fail, he said, no, I get up, I try it again. I get up, I try something new. I stick it out, and look at what he did. Thomas Edison, right? Invented the light bulb. Imagine if that was not invented because he gave up. He had over 1,000 failed prototypes before inventing the light bulb. 1,000! What would we all do without the light bulb, honestly? He said famously, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And I love that quote. I love that quote. You learn from every single failure, and that's so cliche, and I know. But all of these people, imagine if they just gave up because it didn't work the first time. I'm just saying, if this didn't convince you, I don't know what will. So, but if I did convince you, hopefully, let's get into the action-based conclusion. So as I said, I always make my conclusions, or I, in some other way, incorporate action-based things in my podcast because it's just so important. It's proven to be one of the best ways to learn. You know, obviously, you can listen to this podcast, be inspired for a second, and then nothing really changes. But I think if I give you actually actionable tips to rebuild your endurance and to stick with your dreams, we can get somewhere, you know, and you can actually incorporate these things. So I'm excited. I hope you are. And let's get into it. So, actionable tips to rebuild endurance and stick with your dreams. So the first thing is to reframe struggle as proof that you're on the right path, right? Seeing that as that little dip instead of the whole graph going down. Discomfort does not mean misalignment, okay? When one thing doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean that it's not meant for you. It doesn't mean, you know, everyone thinks you're gonna like find your passion and everything is just gonna flow and nothing will be. That's not true. It's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to work for it. Not everything is easy. And otherwise, even if everything is easy, at the end of your life, you're like, what did I actually do? Like everything just kind of did itself for me, you know? You want to make sure it's something you're actually really proud of. So discomfort is not misalignment. Discomfort is evidence of growth and expansion. You learn something, right? And you get back up and you put what you just learned to another test. And you put it into action. And so the second tip I have for you is to use time as a silent strategy. So as I said before, I like to sometimes, before making a decision or whatever, just sleep on it for a night. And that's what I mean here, right? Let your goals marinate. Don't expect clarity and results in week 1. So I started this podcast with a certain idea. And even though we are 7 episodes in, I think. I mean, it's not that much yet, but that idea has already kind of changed, right? In my head, at least. So, things grow naturally and you have to let them. It's not that you're going to have this amazing idea and everything is just going to be perfect and everything is going to go exactly the way you think they are going to go. No, things are going to change, but that's beautiful. Let goals marinate and set time-based intention is always a very, very good thing. Set time-based intentions. So, obviously, there is a dark side, right? You can't keep working on something that keeps failing. And what you could do to kind of have that clarity is to say, okay, for example, I'll pursue this for 1 year before reevaluating. So let's go back to the person who starts a YouTube or a podcast in order to make some money. A good thing for them to do, if that's truly their goal, is say, okay, I'll pursue this for 1 year. If by then I do not see any future, I do not see me making any money anytime soon, it's done. They're already closer to their goal, probably. It depends how good of a creator they are, I guess. But that could be a good way to tell yourself, okay, this is the time I have. And it also motivates you to take action, I think, because that's another thing. But that's already another episode. I always come up with episodes ideas during episodes. It's not very helpful for my brain. But next point is track progress, not perfection. Keep a persistence log instead of a to-do list. Celebrate I showed up today even if it wasn't perfect. So I talk about fitness a lot and I know, but it's because it plays a really big part of my life. And not every workout is the best workout ever. Actually, there's this thing called the rule of 3 or something, or the 3/3 rule. I don't know exactly how it's called, but basically it says that 3% is gonna feel amazing. 3% is gonna be like 3%. What am I saying? Oh my god! A third of the time is gonna feel amazing. A third of the time is gonna be like, yeah, okay, like it was fine, and then a third is gonna feel absolutely miserable. But it doesn't mean that it feels miserable or you didn't reach your PR or you couldn't last as long on the Stairmaster as your goal was. It doesn't mean that what you just did was in vain. You still did something, I talked, was it my second episode or my first? It might have been my first, honestly. But I had just gotten my wisdom teeth out. And, of course, it was a week after. You don't hear me talking like chomping and everything. But basically, of course, I was like healing, so I couldn't go to the gym. And that day I had done like a 20 minutes beginner Pilates thing, or like a 15 minutes Pilates thing. And, even though it wasn't much, like it wasn't a full-on gym session that I was used to, it was something and it sets the right tone, right? So, oh my God, I'm thinking, that feels like so long ago. Guys, I'm not trying to ramble, but it just happens naturally. What can I say? Okay, next tip is train the brain for long-term focus. So as I said, we are addicted to that dopamine, right? Use dopamine fasting or delayed gratification practices in order to train your brain for longer term. So one thing is definitely like restricting TikTok, turning off your notifications, If you are getting dopamine any other way, try and fast on it, restrict it a little bit. It doesn't mean it can never play a part in your life. And I'm not saying, go 100% delete it. If that's what you want to do, great. You can also just try and reduce it. However you want to do this, it's important to show your brain that there are other options as well. A thing you could do is read biographies of people who took the slow route. Just like the examples I gave before about Vincent van Gogh and J.K. Rowling, reading their biographies might show you that it might have not all gone perfectly, but in the end they reached their goal, right? So getting inspired by those kind of stories and by that kind of content, people who are going for the long term, instead of looking at constant success stories and the quick fixes and whatever, like the overnight success stories. There are success stories, of course, like I said, out there of people that struggled a lot and had to cram their cells in different ways to get to that final result. And so, what you consume is who you are, not just in terms of food, but in terms of content, music, book, like whatever, everything you consume, even like socially, it makes who you are. And it's so important that we see that and we change that in order to get to our goal. So if you have a really long-term goal, don't go on TikTok for like an hour every single day, because you're going to keep seeing people who like have these crazy things happen to them like overnight, or you're just going to get that dopamine hit every single time. Like try and train yourself for that longer term goal, right? And then the last tip I have is replace the quick fix with the slow burn. So choose daily rituals that compound. Like I said, we don't want to do a 360, right? If you want to, for example, write a book, you're going to write that book in one sitting? No. The best thing, or like one of the best things, the thing I'm recommending to you right now is, okay, tell yourself, I'm going to do 20 minutes of writing every day, or I'm going to write this amount of pages every day. When you want to be like a really great meditator, you want to be able to meditate for like an hour, you're going to start with like 10 minutes a day, probably. I mean, you're not going to immediately do an hour, and if you want to run a marathon, you're not going to go out and run a marathon, you're going to build it up. Daily rituals and setting those little goals can really, really help you. But those were all my tips. So let me do a quick recap. So we have reframe your struggle as proof that you're on the right path. Use your time as a silent strategy. So let your goals marinate and setting those time-based intentions. Track your progress, not your perfection. Even if you just showed up, that's already progress. Train the brain for long-term focusing with dopamine fasting. And then lastly, replace the quick fix with the slow burn by utilizing your daily rituals. So yeah, playing the long game in a fast world. It's not always very easy. Resilience is rare because patience is rare. Your ability to stay when others leave is your ultimate power. You need to remind yourself that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is fragile. Okay, I actually think I talked less than in my other episodes because I'm still a little bit tired from all the sugar. Yeah, I did really enjoy this episode. I hope you did too. So, podcast episodes, I should actually say this every single time. I always forget, but I remember now. Podcast episodes are always on Thursdays, 8 p.m. Central European time. So yeah, definitely if you want to, feel free. You can follow me on my Instagram and TikTok. I'm not spamming you at all. Like if I post every day, it's like one post. It's either cute little photos of just my daily things. Like if I went on a hike, I might do some slides of some of the beautiful views I had. Or it is about a podcast episode that shows you the chapters of the podcast episode, so you can see kind of what it's about. So if you are interested in the podcast or in this kind of, community and everything that I'm trying to build, definitely follow me over there. And things like episode requests or whatever, or if you just want to talk to somebody, DMs are always open. But yeah, I'm gonna leave you here. Thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed talking to you, just like I do every week. So yeah, I'll see you in the next episode. Bye bye.